think outside the box, if you will. I mean, go there, go off campus. Let's think this through. And sure enough, that's where the Mustang was born. When it finally hit, it took the country by storm.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Cars in Context. You know, this is the Motor City. This is where the industry was born, and that's why this is the show that puts cars into the context of your everyday life. I'm your host, John Clor. I'll hope to entertain you a little bit, maybe give you some enlightenment, some education, but I will not apologize for my decidedly Detroit perspective. Today we're going to have a really great show for you. We're going to help you get through winter with a little bit of car care tips that'll make the difference between finding yourself on the side of the road or getting through what's generally tough around the Midwest in our winter months. And to do that, we're going to invite back an old friend, Joe Babiasz. Joe, thanks for coming back to Cars in Context.
Hi, John. Pleasure to be here.
Now, we're going to help people get through these nasty months and the things they need to know just to think about when they look at their car and say, what do I have to do to make sure I'm going to survive these next few months? But before we do that, it's really time to find out what's in the news. Okay, we'll start off by telling folks, you know, we've heard reports about the Chevy Volt, and I like to talk about it because we found out near the end of summer that Volt sales had spiked. Did I say that as a pun? I think I did. But at what cost? Because, you know, General Motors had this sales spike for the Volt in the summer, and especially in America Car Heating, California, which sales were really hot. But then just right after that report, a report out of Reuters News Service zapped all these sales joy being celebrated here in Detroit by claiming that GM is losing like $50,000 on every Volt it builds. Now, the experts that they quoted in the story said that GM invested $1.2 billion in the Volt, and it cost anywhere from $76,000 to $88,000 to build it. But the company said that these so-called experts got their wires crossed because they spread the car's product development costs across the number of Volts sold instead of distributing the costs across the lifetime of the volume of the program. Now, by that I mean, since General Motors plans to use Volt technology in other cars in several years, that also brings down the manufacturing purchasing costs when spread over the entire program, over the entire years of the system. It brings it down to the point where these cars can actually make money. Now, my take is that one factor is that you can get a great lease on a Volt, folks. Some customers are leasing this car for as little as $5,000 over 2 years. So that does affect the profit of it. But even if GM doesn't break even on the Volt, even for a few years, we forget that the first generation Prius was a huge money loser for Toyota. Even when it was being subsidized by the Japanese government, they were losing money on the Priuses. And what's today? The Prius is hailed, even though it's still very much a niche market vehicle. I expect the same will be true for the Volt.
I agree, John.
There's just too many bashers out there. I said, let it run its course. So now, do you have a headline for us?
I do. Bench seats go by way of the 8-track.
Oh, no.
Yes, they are going away. General Motors has been the last holdout, still offering the bench seat in the current Impala.
Okay.
But in 2014, with the new Impala, you'll no longer be able to get the bench seat option. Right now, bench seat penetration has been about 10%, so General Motors feels it's just not worth to keep it anymore. I personally wish they'd be able to keep the bench seat. I mean, how are you going to kind of get together with your significant other and go to a drive-in movie? But then again, there aren't many drive-in movies left anymore.
In Detroit, no, I bet you folks didn't even know that you could get a bench seat in the current Impala. But the question is then, Joe, can you still buy a Necker's knob at the auto parts store? I don't know.
I don't know. No idea. So bench seats are gone.
God, that's
2014.
Sad.
If you want to get them, order them now.
That's right. Well, I've got another headline about electrics. How about Nissan? Remember the Nissan Leaf?
Oh, sure.
Well, they're offering now huge discounts on the Leaf in the United States in an effort to what? Boost sales, of course. This fall, Nissan began offering the Leaf for $219 a month for 32 months with only like $3,000 down. So like GM trying to give you a real attractive lease, they're trying to get folks into this car. Much like back in the day when performance cars were the thing and Carroll Shelby got you into that Hertz Shelby Mustang, just to get the guys testing out. This lease is so attractive, they really think they'll bring some fans in because, you know, until this, this current deal was offered, only 4,000 Leafs or so were sold in the United States. They were expecting 20,000 a year. So sales have not been, and plus they had a little issue, Joe, I don't know if you heard about this, folks. There was a problem with some of the batteries on the early Leafs that were sold that have a lot of miles on them out west, and some of the people that are driving these cars asked Nissan for a buyback. They just want to turn them in. They said that the batteries lose their charge as they grow older. Well, to me, folks, do you have a laptop? Does your laptop battery last as long now as it did 3 years ago? No, mine was a 3-hour battery, now it lasts about an hour.
Exactly.
You know, the only difference is I don't expect my laptop to get me to work. So maybe that is an issue. But that's pretty, well, didn't we just say that about when the electrics came in, that there's always going to be an issue there? And
Sure.
Until the technology.
Part of battery technology as it stands today.
Unbelievable.
It'll get better.
Yep, just give it some time. Joe, you got another one for us?
I do. There's a great article in Detroit News by Larry Prince, and it talked about the perception of domestic car quality. The perception lags the reality. You know, we talk, a lot of people still believe that imports have a better quality rating than do the domestics. But honestly, the domestics are as good, if not better, than the imports at their same or similar price point. But one way this perception is changing is through rental cars. He noted that there was an Acura owner who rented a Lincoln MKZ and was absolutely shocked at the quality and so impressed with this car. And so it looks like the rental car companies are doing their part to get people in domestic products for a length of time, perhaps up to a week, when the customer can say, boy, this thing is a lot better than my 1979 Chevy was, you know?
Because they haven't
That's
been-
what we need to do. We need to get people into the seats of these new domestic cars, and they will soon realize everything coming out by the big three is as good, if not better, than the imports.
You know, it's a really important point to make, Joe, and yet you see in the news reports that we get beat up for saying, well, a lot of these sales were fleet sales. Well, that's, you know, the rental car sales. But it's very important for automakers to get their cars into the hands of the John Q. public, especially if you haven't driven that brand. And that's really the only way you'll get to know it. And, by the way, in case you've traveled recently, it's not like driving around here in the Detroit area. When you go out east towards Washington, D.C., or you go out west towards L.A., American cars are few and far between out there. You just don't see
Especially in
it.
California, sure.
Well, speaking of that, I think I've got a good one here. Talking about a perception problem. Remember the Toyota Matrix?
Sure.
A goner. That's right. Another model is joining the automotive nameplate graveyard. Toyota announced it no longer sell the Matrix due to sagging sales. You know, back in '02, I think it was, they were selling like almost 70,000 of these things a year. And for 2012, they were just hitting just rarely above 3,000. So it was time to let the Matrix go. But what's interesting about this car, about the Toyota Matrix, is that it began life as a joint venture between General Motors and Toyota, built off the Corolla. The car was built at the NUMMI plant. It was used the same parts, built at the same plant, by the same people, on the same line. One was a Toyota Matrix, the other one was a Pontiac Vibe. You sold the cars, and when you came time to rate the cars, the Matrix was rated a fantastic, what a wonderful car, and the Vibe was rated a terrible American car.
And yet
Same
it was
car,
the same
same
car.
parts,
Absolutely.
different badge, built by the same people in the same plant. You talk about perception.
Perception, that's
The
what it is.
Matrix kind of is like the poster child of misperception. And if you guys want to go online and research this, just do Matrix versus Vibe, and you'll see lots of journalists have tried to tackle this issue, which is why when you read some report about that says, you know, oh, the Japanese quality is better or Korean quality is better, sometimes it gets stuck in our minds. So really good on those headlines, but I really enjoyed that. Thank you much. So we're going to come back and talk about our topic of the day with winter car care in a moment right after this.
Thousands of your friends and neighbors enjoy music under starlit skies, rediscovering themselves every day through our classes and events. Children celebrate life here and learn all sorts of amazing things. We enrich lives in honor of veterans. Your friends and neighbors gather to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice of all so we could live free. Don't take your war memorial for granted. Make your contribution today.
Welcome back, everybody, to Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. Today's topic of the day, we're going to be speaking about car maintenance, especially in the winter. You know, winter poses specific problems for you and your car. So to get us through this winter month and these winter months, We brought our expert, Joe Babiasz, back. Joe, thanks for joining us again.
Hi, John. Good to see
Joe,
you.
there's a lot of things going on in the car world when it comes to winter maintenance, and if people just keep a couple things in their mind, I think they'll get through with less drama. And by drama, I mean that phone call to the tow truck.
AAA.
That's right. Can you guys come out and get me? All right, so let's start at the top. Folks, if you're thinking about, well, now what have I not done or what do I need to do, get a pencil and paper, come on back to the TV set, and let's start off with just the whole exterior of the car. You know the winter months are tough on an exterior. What do we need to do to kind of prep ourselves for keeping this car from getting worse?
Well, it's really important, John, to wash and wax your car regularly, at least wax it twice a year. You know, when you, in the fall, take a look if there's any chips in the car, you want to get a little touch-up paint, you can get it at your dealership or you can get it at a custom paint store. Apply a little bit of touch-up paint to those chips to prevent further rusting of the car.
Right.
You also want to take a look underneath all the doors. There's something called a weep hole, and sometimes they clog up with some dirt, and what happens is if the water cannot get out from under the door, eventually you're going to get some rusting. So take a little stick or a little screwdriver or something and just clean those little holes out. It's a real good thing to apply some silicone caulking or silicone grease to your door weather strips and deck weather strips.
Keep them pliable.
Yeah, wash them first, wipe them down. Wipe them down with some Fantastic or some cleaner, and apply that silicone grease. You'll notice in a cold climate when it gets damp, sometimes you'll try to open your door and it just sticks. Well, putting the grease on there will just prevent the door from sticking.
That's especially happens when you have a freeze. If it rains, like a freezing rain, the next day you go to open the door and you can't get the door open. That's that gasket which has stuck itself, frozen itself.
Yes, it's
and that's
frozen
because you didn't take the time to.
And you can tear it.
Yeah, right, which is expensive. So this little piece of advice is really a good one, Joe. I really like that idea. And a lot of people think, well, I'm going to go to the car wash that the football team was giving at the school, and then that was a lick in the promise. But really what you're talking about is when you go wash this car, the door jams, the things that you don't get with a quick lick and a promise wash. Spend a little bit of time with your car before you said, okay, now I'm ready for the finish to face winter. And especially I like the idea of that touch-up paint, folks. Really important, because if you let it rust, the rust will actually go underneath the primer and the paint, and that causes the bubbles, which will really devalue your car, even if it's only a couple of them. Get them taken care of before the winter months hit.
And it's not hard to do. It's an easy thing to do. And one last thing for the winter, it's really important to do an inspection of all of your exterior lighting. Make sure your headlamps are working, your parking lamps, your brake lights, so on. Get a family member to help you out and you step on the brake pedal. Do this inspection, make sure your lighting is taken care of.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the lighting on their, let's say their license plate goes out. And those bulbs are cheap. You might pay $70, $80 for a half an hour labor for the dealer to put that in. You can do that yourself in just minutes.
You can do it yourself.
A quick walk around. Your blinkers are all working. Your headlights are working. Another thing, Joe, is those fogged headlights, because our lenses get old and it's time to polish those up and clean them.
You can clean them up.
Yeah,
There's
really good ideas.
Yep, so take a look at your lighting. Make sure the lighting is in good shape. Everything is working fine. And don't be afraid if you find the headlamp or tail lamp out. Go to your owner's manual. Most owner's manuals today will show you how to replace those bulbs. It'll cost you a few dollars at the auto store. You don't have to know what kind of bulb it is. The auto store can help find you the appropriate bulb for you, and in some cases they'll even help you put them in.
Really a good idea. Okay, so now we've got the outside walk around done. We're kind of ready there, but before we get into the mechanicals, Joe, what about the inside? Do we have to pay attention in there as well?
Oh, sure. I mean, you do your typical thing. You clean the inside, you vacuum the carpets. I'd suggest you shampoo the carpets. Get them nice and clean. Get all the old road dirt and grime off of them. If you have leather seats, consider putting leather conditioner on your seats, and just make sure your interior is really clean. Also consider buying specific floor mats that are designed for winter use. These are mats that will hold the salt and the water and the snow within the mat, prevent the salt from getting in the carpet. Once salt gets in the carpet, it's almost impossible to get it out.
Discolors and hardens it.
It hardens, exactly. The carpet gets really hard. Those mats, they cost a few dollars, but ultimately they're going to save you a lot of money in the back end when you sell the car. The car will look better.
My favorite brand on those, Joe's, is something called WeatherTech.
WeatherTech,
folks, this is an American company. They use American products, and they make these mats custom-made, laser scanned, and they're great. I mean, they're a little pricey, but let me tell you, they'll last a lifetime of your car.
And they'll also help your shoes, because the way they're designed, if you have shoes in your pants and so on, the water stays in a trough below
Not in your,
and
that's awesome.
it'll save your
There you
shoes.
go.
So it does a lot of good. You know, great product to have.
Not only that, it affects the resale value of your car. You know, you might have a nice looking car and somebody gets in to test drive it and they look at what a wrecked interior this is.
Sure.
You know, it's time to clean
First
that. Because in the
impression.
winter, you may not have access to you know, vacuum cleaner and that, so get it done now.
Right.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this engine thing. Let's get under the hood. What do we have to look at on the engine?
You know, just for your generic engine inspection, open up the hood, take a good look underneath the hood, look for any loose parts or anything that just doesn't look right. Check your belts and hoses, see if the serpentine belt might have some cracks in it, time for a change, make sure your hoses are in good shape. Also check to see whether you have any fluid leaks, and if you do, certainly, you know, get them repaired. It's also a good time to take a look at your air filter.
Yep.
If it, you know, pop it open. It's easy to do. The owner's manual will tell you how to do it. Again, so check your air filter. It also save you a lot of money instead of having it replaced at the instant oil changes or at
Yeah,
a
we told you
retailer.
folks earlier in an earlier show when we talked about Under Hood 101, remember that show? We said if you're going to tell the guy, okay, I need a new oil filter, listen, or air filter, I'll do it myself. But don't just tell them you'll do it yourself and not get it done, because then you're just putting the dirty filter back in. You could save that money, but you only save it when you do it. So get it done.
Yep, absolutely.
All right,
So
then-
that's for pretty much for the engine.
But then the bottom line is it's always about fluids. Wintertime, you know, the salt spray, we're always running out of windshield washer fluid. What are the things we really got to hit down there?
Well, you certainly want to check your engine oil, your power steering fluid,
engine oil,
your
yeah.
brake fluid, and so on. Transmission fluid, you want to fill up your washer fluid reservoir. And it's, again, specifically with the oil, in some cars, they require a different viscosity oil for winter driving.
Right.
So you want to take a look. Maybe it might not be quite the time yet, but make sure at that appropriate time, when it becomes the winter, if it changes viscosity requirements, get the appropriate
Instead
oil
of
put in there.
10W30, go down to
Right.
5W30 or something.
Exactly.
Yep,
So
sure.
get the right oil in for
Yep.
the right climate conditions.
Good idea. Now, folks, when we think about winter driving, we're always thinking one thing: battery. It's my battery. Battery's dead. It can't come in today, boss. You know. But the battery issue, you know, people don't believe this, but even in the hot climates, battery's a huge issue in hot climates. But in the cold climate, cranking goes down. You can do a lot under your hood just before the winter season hits to really make sure your battery's operating at peak efficiency, even if you have what they call you know, a sealed battery or a maintenance-free battery, which really isn't the case. What are the couple of tips we can give them there?
Well, most batteries are considered maintenance-free.
Yep.
You don't put in the water like you did years ago and you had the 6 caps, so you'd fill it up. But the one important thing you need to look at with your battery are your battery terminals. Are they corroded?
Yeah.
And if they're corroded, they really need to be cleaned. You can clean them with a little bit of baking soda and some water. Be very careful because it's caustic, but just pour the baking soda water combination on it and then rinse them off, and that'll take care of the corrosion. You can also go to your local auto store and get a terminal coating. It's either a spray or a wipe-on that'll prevent future corrosion.
Yep,
from
sometimes
the
they have these little
terminals.
felt pads
Right.
that go over the terminals, and they're impregnated with this anti-corrosive material.
Right, and it'll
It does
help
the trick.
out in the future.
That is really more common, the bad connections, than is the dead battery.
That's true.
From
Yeah.
AAA. So that's really a good one. But what else on
And
that?
one last thing, if your battery is 4 years old or older, I'd recommend you have it checked. Places like O'Reilly's and Pep Boys will, free of charge, do a battery load test in your car. You don't have to take the battery out. You just go to the store, ask for a battery load test. That will test the condition of your battery.
Right.
And after 4 or 5 years, batteries get a little edgy. They seem to start when it's 30 or 40, but when it's 10 out and you're at the grocery store, that's when it decides to go south.
Isn't that the case?
You could take it also one step further. If you have an older car, you can do a complete charging system check. Now, they charge a few dollars for it at these same auto stores, but it'll inspect your entire charging system.
Yeah.
It'll tell you you're going to be good for the rest of the winter.
Well worth it.
Absolutely.
Folks, what you might not know, too, is that some of our sealed batteries are not really sealed at all. You can actually pop those caps, make sure that you haven't, through towing or something in the summer, boiled out all of the electrolyte in them. You can actually check them by popping them and checking them. Not a bad idea. But batteries are important. A lot of other people think, well, look, I've done all this what Joe said. I've watched Cars in Context. Now I'm smart. I'm ready to rock. What else do I need to know? Is there some emergency thing? We've all heard the stories about the guy that says, well, I put 50 pounds of play sand in a shovel in my trunk. Joe, do I have to drive around with 50 pounds of play sand in my trunk?
No, you don't. No, you don't want to. You don't want to drive around. 50 pounds or 200 pounds is just going to, gas miles and
gas
things rolling around. But you do want to have some basic.
All right, so give us a little rundown of what's in the
you,
trunk.
You probably want to have a reflector if you happen to get stuck on the side of the road. Some people will have a set of battery cables. Maybe a pair of gloves if you need to change a tire.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, and while you're at it, check your spare tire. Make sure there's air in it. Make sure if you bought a car that's used, that it has a spare and it has a jack. So do a double check that. You have an extra bottle of washer fluid. Nothing worse than being on 696 and you're far away from home, and all of a sudden you've run out. The snow's coming down.
Folks,
you want to have a little bit extra.
Have you been on 696 or any of the freeways, and you're trying to reach around your windshield, and I'm out of washer fluid? Oh no, that's dangerous, Joe.
It's very dangerous. So make sure you have that, and that's really about it. You can have a safety kit. You might have a little toolbox if you deem necessary. But you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to load up your trunk with everything.
One more thing I'm going to throw out there for you pickup truck owners. A lot of you guys have the truck with a spare tire that has a winch that drops the spare tire to the ground with a little cable. If you haven't dropped that spare tire in 3, 4, 7, 8 years, you might want to do it before winter. Because of the rust and corrosion in Michigan, sometimes that cable can get rusted. So you may be on the road in February, you've got a flat, I've got a good spare, and you got to wind it down, guess what? It's rusted. So it's a good idea to wind it down, get a little WD-40, spray that up in there, and then wind it back up. It'll prevent you from finding that bad surprise, even when you've checked your spare by crawling under there. Oh yeah, I got a great spare. It's got air in it. It's not always just the spare that has air in it. So these little tips could be the difference between you getting through to work or getting to where you're going in the winter, or you making that horrible phone call on your cell phone. Hey, I'm on the side of the road at Cadju in 94. My car broke down. Really good advice, Joe. Really appreciate it. But you know what? I hate to break this to you, but we've got to take a little spot here now because it's time for Pride in My Ride, one of our favorite segments.
Outstanding.
Okay, this week's Pride in My Ride, we're going to let Joe bring you a Pride in My Ride segment. And Joe, what do we have today for our viewer who's got a great car?
John, this comes to us from Gary Revan of Sterling Heights. This is a beautiful 64 Plymouth Savoy. It's a two-door postcard. It was that low-end, cheap Plymouth that, he didn't have a lot of money. Probably had rubber floor mats possibly, when it was new. This car originally was a 6-stick, so it was a very basic car. But now it has a 446 pack, which is the 3-car beautiful underhood, isn't that?
Look at that thing.
The engine has a comp cam, roller rockers, Keith black pistons, and it's been balanced and blueprinted. The car is a 4-speed with bench seat, really great combination. 391 posi. It has electronic ignition and front disc brakes.
Oh my goodness!
It sets the 15-inch American torque thrust wheels are just period correct for the car.
That's right.
Also has a max wedge hood. And Gary's owned the car about 12 years. He's done all the work himself. What a beautiful ride!
This kind of epitomizes what we call the sleeper look, where you buy the Belvederes, you buy the lower end car. You don't want all that glam and the stripes. You just go buy a nice little sleeper base car and then put all your money under the hood.
That's right.
And in the mechanicals. That car's probably now. Does he take it out and show it a little bit?
Oh, regularly. Yes. This is not something he keeps. He has a number of cars, but this one he takes out regularly. It's at a lot of the local car shows. And Gary's a perfectionist. Under hood is spectacular. The entire car is spectacular.
Yeah.
Beautiful ride. Very quick. Nice car.
Folks, if you have a candidate for Pride in My Ride, if you're proud of your ride, all you need to do is send me an email to jclor@carsincontext.com. Include a couple of nice JPEG photos we can use here at WMTV and the story of why you have so much pride in your ride, and we'll be happy to show it on the air. Make sure you get these photos and JPEGs to us so that we can, and the pertinent information, so we can tell the story if you have pride in your ride. Joe, I really appreciate you bringing that one in. That was really cool.
My pleasure. Great
car. Wait a minute, before we can close, we always have some kind of emergency in the control room here, and here comes Kermit Potter, our WMTV station manager. Kermit, do we have viewer mail again?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do.
Oh,
Kermit, thank you very much. Folks, this is our viewer mail segment. I really appreciate you guys keeping those cards and letters, and of course, in this case, emails coming in. I'll start off one, Joe. Let's start it off here with this piece of viewer mail comes from Alan L. of Grosse Pointe Woods. Now, Alan watches WMTV and Cars in Context on Comcast channel 915. here in Grosse Pointe. Here's this question from Alan. It says, "Hi, John. I love your new show." Hey, by the way, so do I. I hope you do too,
I like
folks.
it too.
I saw the episode about tires, Joe. That was the episode you did with it. Let's Talk Tires.
Right.
He said, and from the mention of some of the Chinese brands, I take it that you weren't in favor of having Chinese tires available in the U.S. market. I guess I was pretty clear about that. But isn't it true when the Chinese tires became widely available here, we saw a decrease in tire prices across the board? Isn't that a benefit to everyone? Okay, Alan, you got me on that one. Yes, it is true that when we were flooded with cheap imported tires here, tire prices went down. But Joe, that's because when the market gets flooded with materials, everybody tries to stay competitive. So our national brands lowered their prices a bit just to try to stay in that race. But folks, that was because manufacturers, import manufacturers, were just trying to dump these tires here to try to just buy into part of our tire market. So you might know that just recently the tariffs have expired. So those tariffs we put on, so now the Chinese are expected to up exports to U.S. 15–20%.
Wow.
So now tires prices are going to go back down, but my warning will be the same. You get what you pay for. So be careful when you buy imported tires. Now, Joe, do you have a piece of mail?
I do. This one comes from Greg Rittenhouse of Warren, who watches Cars in Context on WMTV on ATT Uverse Channel 99.
ATT Uverse.
And his question is, Joe, I was told that with today's new car finishes, I never have to wax my car. Is that true? The answer is no, it's not true. You'd like it to be true, but it's not. You know, today's car finishes are spectacular. They're just like show car finishes, and they're very durable, but they do need maintenance just like the rest of your car. You know, you need to clean and wax your car once or twice a year. Use a really good wax. It takes the impurities, it takes the contaminants off the paint. It protects the paint against UV. It'll make your car last longer. Your car will look a lot nicer. And besides, it's good exercise.
That's
so
right.
You have to wax your car.
Joe wants to buy that stuff that you just wipe on.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like you just put it on.
Spray on it.
And then you just, and there's no elbow grease. The fact of the matter is, folks, if you really want your car to stay new looking, and why don't we want it to stay new looking? It will really improve the resale value of your car. Spend a few minutes with your car. Your car can be your friend. And sometimes I like to get the kids involved, because when I say, hey, let's go wax the car, they all disappear. But you get them involved, and it's you know, get it in the shade, have a little bit of fun with that car. Once you get it waxed, you know, that resale value, you'll be happy you spent some time keeping that car in great shape.
And you feel better driving a clean car.
You always do.
Really feel better when a car is nice and clean and spotless. It just makes you feel better about it.
It's worth the time and effort. So those were great questions. If you have a question that you've like to see aired on Cars in Context, you can just shoot me an email to jclor@carsincontext.com, and we'll be sure to put your question from viewer mail on the air on the next show. So I appreciate that from all you viewers out there. Joe, believe it or not, we're out of time. So I really appreciate you coming by.
Hey, my pleasure,
Joe
John.
Babiasz.
My
Now, we can
pleasure.
still read you on automotivetraveler.com.
Yes, you can.
And of course, we'll list all the shows you'll be doing for us on carsincontext.com. Folks, again, I want to thank you for joining us. Remember, knowledge is power. That's what we're doing all about here at Cars in Context. Join us next time. I'm your host, John Clor. Bye-bye.